Hey everybody, it's Dr. Wood, and this is going to be a brief talk about the graduate paper process. So I kind of wanted you to go through step by step. I want to go through it with you so that way you kind of understand the process, what the due dates are going to be. And then if you have any questions that come up, certainly feel free to reach out to me. Keep in mind, because this is happening during quarantine time and you can't just swing by my office, I want to make sure that I'm available for all of you. So email is obviously a pretty easy way to get a hold of me, but we can certainly set up phone calls. We can do Skype sessions or Zoom sessions. We can do carrier pigeons, smoke signals, anything you like. We can totally communicate however you want, as long as you are at least 6 feet away from me. But anyway, getting into the details here. So I'm just going to kind of do something a little different than what I normally do and kind of zoom in on my slide over here. And so starting off, let me get this off my screen. Starting off, basically what we're seeing here is that the first project that's going to be due, or first assignment that's going to be due from you, is going to be the research proposal. And so this is going to be due on 6/7/20. It'll be due by 11:59 p.m. So it'll be a Sunday. So it's coming up pretty quick, but you should have about a week or so, a little less than a week, to come up with an idea for what you want to do. Now, keep in mind, this is not going to be the thing that locks you into your paper, but it should be pretty close to kind of your final idea. And since you're submitting this to me, if you get a satisfactory grade on it, then that will mean that you are approved to continue on with it. So I'll be checking these pretty shortly after the due date there. So how do you come up with your research idea? Basically, since you're going to be spending a lot of time on this, many hours, it should be something that's pretty interesting to you. A lot of people like to choose things that either they have a personal or maybe like a family connection with. So for instance, if you have a loved one who suffers from PCOS or HIV or something like that, then perhaps you might want to do it on something related to that, right? So maybe about a new treatment option, or maybe mortality benefits with certain interventions, things like that. Maybe just something you've always kind of wondered about, but you didn't really have a chance to really dive deep into it. This is a good opportunity for that. And ideally, it could also be something that's relevant to your chosen career path. So for instance, if you're really gunning for dermatology, it could be a good idea to do something dermatology related. Because again, what if you're going for like a fellowship after you graduate, and one of the things you can have is like, oh yeah, I did this whole project on X, Y, and Z. That can make you kind of stand out to a potential interviewer over someone else who's applying for the same position. So that could be beneficial to do along those pathways as well. So when you come up with an idea, you want to make sure it's not something too broad or too narrow. And so you have to find sort of the Goldilocks sort of point for your idea. So what do I mean by too broad or too narrow? Saying what's the best treatment for hypertension? Well, there's a lot of things that are out there that could be useful for hypertension. There's drugs, there's non-pharmacologic means, you could do acupuncture. I mean, there's a million things out there that could be relevant to hypertension. That's pretty broad. You also don't want to do something so narrow that there's no research that's out there. So for instance, say you wanted to do something on keeping it relevant to today's current headlines. Like say you want to do something COVID related, and you wanted to do something related to like a new investigational drug. Well, there might not be a whole lot of information out there about it, and at least enough to fill up a 10-page paper. So because of that, it might be too narrow. We need to broaden it out to say, okay, well, what are the treatment options that are available for COVID, or at least have been touted for COVID? What is available out there? What's the evidence showing pro or con against these different treatment options, right? Something to think about with that. Again, there has to be some kind of research based on it, so you can't be like, what's the cure rate for injecting bleach in treating COVID-19? Well, there's not going to be any research that's out there about that, so that's something you need to be able to at least find your references for. Anyway, so this will be due by 6/7/20, as I mentioned. If you get an approval on that, so if you get a grade on that, just assume that means that you are approved. I give some comments or some feedback to some ways you can kind of re-engineer it a little bit to maybe fit, the level of depth that we're looking for here. So feedback will be there. If you want to change it, then you need to come to me and get that approval. So if you come up with a new idea and you're like, man, I totally hate that other idea, this is what I want to do, just shoot me an email and I'll either give you a yay or an A, and then we can go on from there. Okay, so you're not locked in right at that point. So moving on, the next thing we're going to do here is the reference list. And so this is going to be pretty straightforward, and you're going to be doing this. I'll have more videos coming up in the future on terms of how to find your references. Most of you probably have a pretty decent idea of how to do this now, but something I want to kind of at least let you know, this is what we're looking for. Basically, we want at least 15 references for your 10-page paper. Shouldn't be too difficult. The thing that may be a little bit more challenging is that 5 have to be within the past 5 years, and so we want to make sure we're using relevant, recent primary literature. Okay, and at least 5 out of that list of 15 need to come from peer-reviewed journals, right? So the primary literature. So that includes like most things you're going to find on PubMed, a lot of things you're going to find on the Nova Library site, New England Journal of Medicine or the Lancet, different things like that are going to be peer-reviewed, and that means that they're going to have more clout behind it. That you're going to be assured that this is more sort of well thought out research. It's been okayed by other individuals who are experts in the field, etc. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. You can use things like textbooks too. Like we'll talk about different levels of literature, and so textbooks kind of fit into that tertiary level of literature where it's kind of basic background information, and those can be useful. You don't want to use too many of them, but if it's like, for instance, you're talking about the basic pathophysiology of a disease state as your introduction, that's perfect for use for textbooks and things like that. Okay. Most of you are going to want to go straight to UpToDate, and I don't begrudge you that at all, but just let you know that this is good for expert opinion, and it's also a really good starting off point for a topic. So if you don't know anything about a topic and you want to go to UpToDate to get some basics about it, that's really good. But look at the references, right? You want to dig a little bit deeper and make sure you're pulling out their primary sources and using that for your evidence rather than just saying, well, UpToDate said this. Well, that may not mean exactly what you think it does. And I'll have a whole video about UpToDate later on in this course here. And this will be due the following week after your research proposal, so 6/14/20, again, Sunday by midnight. Moving on then, we're going to be focusing a little bit more on how we do critical evaluation of the literature. And so this is an exercise you should be doing anyway for all of your sources that you're going to be pulling here. And basically what we're going to be doing is that one of the sources you have that was peer-reviewed primary literature from the past 5 years, we're going to have an exercise where it's kind of similar to what we did in EpiBio back in the day, assuming you haven't repressed all those memories, but you'll have a question list. You'll kind of go through and answer different things like, what are the inclusion criteria? What are the exclusion criteria? What were the outcome measures? Things you can't just get from the abstract. This is what we're looking for in terms of being able to critically evaluate the literature. Again, that'll be due on 7/5/20. There'll be some other quizzes and things like that it'll be due in the meantime, but just know that this is going to be the due date for that. Again, plan around your holidays. If you're never going to be busy all weekend, get this done beforehand. Okay, so just because you said, well, it was the 4th of July, not a great excuse for not getting something in. Okay, moving on. Next, so we have written the bulk of your paper by this point, right? So we're talking about the peer review process, and basically I'll have a list that will be posted up, or all of your peer reviewers will already be assigned. Basically, one of your classmates is going to be responsible for going through and proofreading and providing suggestions on your paper. So this means that by this time, by 7/12/20, you need to have basically the majority of that paper done. So like between the 8 to 10 pages, I would say the bulk of it has to be done by that point. Okay. So then you'll submit this to your reviewer. You'll also submit the copy on Canvas so I can see that it was done. And basically your reviewer is going to go through, and you as a reviewer will go through your person's paper and go through and make suggestions and changes and track changes. I'll have a quick video on how to do this in Word later on. I'm sure most of you know how to do this, but if you don't, there will be a video about that. Okay. And then the following week, once you've revised your person's copy, you're then going to send that back to the author and then submit your reviewed copy. So all the changes you made, you're going to submit that to Canvas too, because I want to see what you did. I want to see critically how are you evaluating their paper and what kind of suggestions you are making, right? And again, based on the rubric that you'll have already have looked at about the things you need to have on your GP1, like if you're missing that kind of stuff, if you miss it, they missed it, then you're on the hook for that, right? So you get some points deducted for that. So for instance, if they are missing, their whole reference list, well, you should be able to point that out. Be like, hey, you really need to get your references in here. Otherwise, you might be held accountable for that. Okay. So that's a peer review process. And then you'll have your final sort of draft paper at that point here. So this will be due by 7/26/20 at midnight again. And basically, this is going to be like 75 to 85% of your paper like done for your final GP1, right? So basically all that's left after this point, once you turn it in, is going to be polished. The reason why I have you turn in basically almost a finished product this early is because, one, you don't want to have to be working on this all the way through your rotations, right? We don't know what rotations are going to look like necessarily. I hope you're going straight into rotations. Again, I have no idea, right? We have no idea what's going to happen with COVID, but basically, I don't want you to have to be thinking about that. So if you can get the majority of it done this summer, when you're going to be doing some other classes where you're self-directed anyway, this is a perfect time to get all that done. The other thing too is that I get a chance to read all of these and provide feedback to make sure you're not going to be missing any huge things, so that when you turn in the actual final project, I've already pretty much have read everything, and it'll make the grading process much easier, right? So it kind of benefits the both of us to have the majority of the work already done, okay? So then you'll have the rough draft turned in by the end of this class, and then the following fall semester during your rotations, that's when you submit it as your GP1. So final spit polish, go through, make any final changes, and then you're done with that GP1, okay? So some general tips, things that I have noticed doing this for the past couple of years. Don't wait until the last minute. That sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of people do this anyway. So try to work on things early, because you may run into a roadblock, and I don't want to get an email 15 minutes before the due time being like, there's no research, there's no articles on this topic. Like, well, you should have figured that out well beforehand. So please try not to wait till the last minute for that kind of stuff. If you're going to have an issue with the deadline, just reach out early. Like, let me know beforehand. I'm much more apt to give you some leeway if you let me know before an issue pops up rather than afterwards. I know stuff happens sometimes, so just keep that in mind. Try to reach out early if you can. And then this is the biggest one most people get points counted off on: follow your rubrics. It's not that hard. If there's a box on there that says include this thing, include that thing, and you'll get all the points for it. It's not too difficult. So make sure you do that. And again, this is still a new process, still evolving. This is my third year doing graduate projects, spearheading it. So your feedback and suggestions are always definitely appreciated. I think we've got a pretty good, well-running machine at this point. So, this is the second time me actually doing it as of this class. So I think we got a good process here. But again, your feedback is always appreciated. Either on evaluations, you want to shoot me an email, anything like that is totally fine. I'm more than happy to hear that. So that's it for this section. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.